It informed you that your past mistakes are the main focus of your narrative, and that you won't be truly blessed until you find a way to reverse them. You've kept a confidential file of your worst moments, and you've read it to yourself far more often than anyone else has. Let me address that file directly. I've cleaned your past. I have decided not to carry your wrongs. Nobody in heaven is left with the record you keep against yourself. Therefore, don't go out and practice your past mistakes as though they still bear your name, because they don't. Additionally, the world can only bind you to a sentence that is no longer being served by broadcasting debt that has already been canceled. Your worst season is not you. You weren't. Consider a typical action you took this week. On your phone, you opened a list. What you have was on one side, and what you owe was on the other. You gazed at the space between the two columns until it seemed like a penalty imposed. After that, you shut down the screen and continued to prepare dinner. There is more to the story than that gap. It was never the entire tale. As a sign of my concern, you read it. It only represents a single season. The wind also causes the seasons to change. So take a breath and glance up from the columns. It's not your name, but the math is genuine. It's not worth it. I don't have the last say in your life. This chamber has more air than the math can explain. I am also aware of the places you have been tempted to seek solace rather than approaching me. The world gives you less expensive water when your thirst becomes intense. The consent of those who are about to depart. The illumination of a nighttime screen. The compliments of an admirer who doesn't know you. The sound that muffles your soul's cry for another day. It won't be able to hold you. Nobody on earth has the ability to permanently ease your inner pain. Additionally, the longer you look for alternatives, the more hollow you become, until even those alternatives become ineffective. You've been keeping an ear out for thunder. You've been waiting for a clear enough indication to put an end to your doubts. But I don't normally arrive like that. I frequently follow the direction of the wind, not always loud. It's real enough to bend the grass in a field, yet it's not always something you can point to. It's real enough to alter your breathing, genuine enough to advance your life before you can articulate how. And at this moment, the identical breath is passing over you. My words stated this about me a long time ago, and you are hearing it now. I come and go anywhere I like, just like the wind. Even if you are unable to track it, you can sense it stirring. You have been living in silence, but it has never been empty. The only reason it felt empty was that I was already working in the silence, while you were searching for thunder. Keep your distance and allow me to respond to the one question that has been on your mind for years, but you have never been able to put into words. I believe you are familiar with this question. If a father has been genuinely kind to me, why is it so difficult to see the goodness? Remain where you are. This air is not being rushed. You are visible to me. As you performed the same calculation 3 times in the hopes that the figures would soften, I stood beside you at the table, where the bread was thin and the bill column was thick. The mother who quietly records everything that hasn't arrived yet. I'm close to the employee who is still feeling behind and is lying down, already calculating the next shift. Nothing has gone undetected. At night, a tally of the years that bent in unexpected directions rushes through your chest. Acquaintance who used to check in has stopped doing so. Your morning prayer became a sentence, then a breath, and even that seemed like a lot to lift. On certain days, I spent every night in the room. I never once went outside. As you have read, my distance was never disappointing. Pay close attention to that, because everything will change. A disgruntled father folds his arms and waits for an explanation on the other side of the floor. A delicate one has already reached halfway to your chair. I've never been the first. I've always been the backup. I want to mention one more thing, but I'll say it quietly. On certain mornings, the weight of the music is present even before your feet hit the ground. The night was uneventful. There was no fresh, terrible news. However, you carry a burden that has no way to get back, and you already know how to pour the coffee and ignore it. However, that pain is not a judgment on you. A person's spirit is referred to as a lamp in my word, and it has been burning low in yours. Your own soul reaching for the water it was meant to drink is what causes the heaviness. And the only reason the reaching seems like grief is because you thought the thirst was a punishment. It was never the penalty. It was a written request to turn back toward the well. You've run aground more than once. I am aware that you left with a full boat and returned home empty-handed. In the middle of the night, when no one could assist you in getting off, you sailed on a design that the wise ones had approved and watched it take on water. Respect evaporated from a room as soon as you entered, and people who had previously trusted you began to ignore you on the street. The loss was short-lived compared to the shame of it. However, this is what I saw. You achieved something much braver than you have ever given yourself credit for while you were still drenched and humiliated on its strand. You went back. You didn't purchase your return with a well-crafted speech or a record to place on the counter. You had nothing to trade and nothing in your hands when you arrived, and I had been yearning to fill those empty palms. The wind changed your life because of that tiny act of humility. I've discovered something that everyone around you has entirely overlooked. You don't vent to your family when you're feeling discouraged and unable to move on. You keep your mouth shut while you are with people you care about. You silently convey the cry to me where it belongs after carrying it by yourself. The majority of individuals never discover that. They call it honesty when they throw their misery over everyone in their path. I would have preferred to shout your discouragement into my ear rather than anyone else's, but you learned through greater suffering. When you come and tell me you can't continue, I don't become upset. I respect you for it. That self-control is not a sign of weakness. When you stood inside the fire, it silently shaped someone's steadiness. I'm sure it was just burning you. So allow me to be straightforward. It is not because the goodness is absent that it remains difficult to perceive. The reason is because you were taught to search for it in the incorrect shape at a very young age, long before you could identify what was. Yesterday, you were given an illustration of how a blessing should fall. Loud, immediate, indisputable, and accompanied by evidence that the skeptics would have to swallow. A number in an account that puts an end to whisperers. A title that belittles those who departed. Something that the entire street could see if you held it up to the light. You started measuring without ever choosing to. My goodness. By seeing if it could be captured on camera and displayed to a large audience. I don't move like that. I've never moved like that. The sea are the offspring of influential men who lead similar lives. You've seen them. They reduce the people around them by draping themselves with belongings, mistaking noise for value. And it always ends horribly, because a gift can be used as a weapon. Rots the grips at hand. They are ashamed of their own name. You aren't made for that showcase, and you don't belong in that house, so I'm not asking you to compete. You are a member of a much older
calmer group. And while your heart was still fragile and broken, a second lie, gentler than the first, began to take hold.